back to another edition of the Dirty Verdict Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, full-time mediator, Peter Taaffe, joined as always by Kyle Herbert.
Here I am.
Here at the offices of the Herbert Trial Law Firm, and also joined by repeat host, Bill Ogden.
I'm like, I don't know if it's a repeat host because I'm here every week.
Are you still? Is he still on probation, Kyle?
It's double secret probation.
Yeah.
So we have to have like a committee meeting to assign a new committee for it. I'm not sure.
Once I'm here, once I pass the 190-month probation period, I'm full time.
We also have a Department of Dirty Verdict Efficiency. It's DOT. And so you might get an email asking what it is you do.
What do I do all day?
All day, Bill. And I know it's Rogaine, minoxidil, Rogaine.
It's not working, but we're here.
Sit-ups, crunches, denture wash.
And 2 of the 4 microphones are currently for sale and will be sold by the. Yeah. So enjoy them while you can.
Who we got with us today, Pete?
Yeah. So we've got 2 esteemed lawyers from the great county of Dallas.
Whoa.
Our second Dallas guest. We had Todd Clement.
Okay.
So he's been displaced as he had a trophy or a plaque that he was the only Dallas lawyer.
He roped me in.
And
doing 5-day chair in Austin for TTLA.
Yeah.
I've been private fundraising for him. Being friends with him is a chore.
He's going to turn you into a Texas Rangers fan.
Hopefully he turned me into a Texas Ranger. I'm telling you.
So we've got Chris Simmons and Mike Lyons. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Did you guys fly in today?
Yeah.
It's windy out there.
It's real windy.
I mean, it's a good thing the FAA is paying attention these days.
Yeah, I was going to say, the safest way for humans to travel statistically is airplanes. Now it's a question mark.
Not anymore.
Both employees at FAA are real focused.
You get sweaty palms just thinking about.
Are you flying back tonight?
Yeah.
Shoot. Yeah, today was quite windy as well, so I'm sure it was fun.
I tell you what, though, let's make the next hour count, right? I mean, this is probably not it for you guys, but in case it is,
It's legacy material.
let's really knock it out of the park today, okay?
So you guys are nice enough to come on. You've had a recent huge verdict in San Antonio against CPS Energy, which was drew everyone's attention. But also you were involved, represented the family of a deceased person from the Astroworld debacle, I guess, and we're on the executive committee for the plaintiffs steering committee group. Also, hopefully we can talk about your involvement in the crane collapse case where some of our colleagues here in Houston were also involved, which was, I think, $860 million verdict.
Yes.
That was in Dallas. And then you were also involved with our friends at the Zell Law Firm on their case against Encore that they were nice enough to come talk to us about a while ago. So that covers everything. We'd also love to hear your background, how y'all got together, and give us little Houston people a lay of the land in Dallas, because it's kind of a foreign land, but just Dallas and the surrounding counties, because I feel like Houston always stakes the claim as like the most populous city, but I feel like the DFW area is larger, definitely larger.
I'll still stand by this fact that there's more leased 3 Series BMWs in Dallas than anywhere else in the country.
That's probably culture.
They're all hanging my hat on that. Yeah, hanging my hat on that.
That's Bill's calling card. Anytime you meet a Dallas person, he asks what type of car they have, and maybe they have a 3 Series.
Hopefully, at least it's super Dallas.
I think they got it free and clear if they have it.
It's got nice router. Yeah.
Where do you lease your 3 Series BMW?
Pardon me, where does your dad lease your?
How many car dealerships does your dad own? And is that where you leased your BMW?
Yeah.
All right. So first things first, how did y'all, let's see, both y'all, where y'all from originally?
Go for it.
I'm from Dallas. So I grew up there, suburbs, K through 12. Then I went to the University of Texas. Then I went to South Texas for law school. So that brought me to Houston. I have lots of Houston friends.
Which suburb?
Plano.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
And what's Plano like back then? It's a monster now.
When we first moved there was 2 flashing lights. There was 1 grocery store. And now it's, enormous.
I saw
2 million people live in Collin County now.
there was like a social media post. It was like Plano in 2001, and then it was Plano in 2024, and it was insane.
I wouldn't have recognized it in 2001 because I got out of there in 1991, 10 years before, but it's changed a lot. Yeah.
I also went to the University of Texas, and my dorm, my freshman year, one whole floor was like the Plano East Marching Band. I think that's right. Plano East or Plano West. They had the entire floor of a dormitory.
Wow.
Yeah, it was weird.
And you signed up and they were like, he's going to fit right in.
Yeah, I immediately picked up the xylophone and it was amazing thereafter.
God-given gifts.
Well, I'm a percussionist.
Okay.
So, Mike, did you know you were going back to Dallas after law school?
Yeah, I did. It's sort of on a whim that I ended up going to law school in Houston, but I'm really glad that I did because I then cross-pollinated. I have lots of friends from Houston. Ended up working at a Houston-based firm, and
Plaintiffs or defense?
I started on the evil side. I did defense work.
Good ones always do.
Can you tell us which firm you're at?
I was at Byrne, Maynard and Parsons, and worked with some great people. Tried some cases against some really good lawyers. And was like, what am I? I mean, I knew what I was. I knew what I wanted to do. So I was really kind of biding my time and then got back to Dallas.
And you got out of high school 91?
Yeah.
So college 95 and then straight into law school from college?
Yeah, that's right. So I guess I'm 26 years into practicing. Something like that. Way too long.
Good. All right. And Chris, how about you?
So I'm born and raised until 10 here at Houston. And then we moved more than most families that weren't in the military or in some sort of government, sheltered environment. Yeah, it was like that. So, did most of my formative years, lived in Plano, east side of Plano, for a cup of coffee, did formative years, high school in Arkansas, graduated.
Where in Arkansas?
So lived in Little Rock for a little bit, but most of the time, well, the gene pool it's
Shallow.
It's wide, but very shallow.
Yeah.
And I'm unfortunately neither because I'm here. Otherwise I'd be in a hot tub with my soulmate, as they say.
You could have gone to the top and said, I'm a Clinton.
Exactly. I think you mean your cousin, but yeah.
It's all, the lines get blurred. So graduated high school, ended up at Texas A&M, graduated there, went to SMU for law school.
Wow, you're like a smart lawyer.
Just
Ish.
a lawyer.
When did you finish at SMU?
2008.
Okay.
So, and my wife and I actually got married after my first year at SMU.
Because you wanted to take things like easy and smooth.
No
what? Stress.
My grades, after the first year versus, I've got a great sample size. 1 year being not married, 2 years being married. I should have gotten married before my first year.
You recommend it?
Oh, yeah. Well, for me, because my grades I went, from working hard and not getting the results I wanted to the dean's list, after we got married. So I credit her with pretty much.
Was your wife success at the time?
Yeah, she was my sugar mama.
I was going to say, she wasn't also a law student.
No.
Okay.
No.
I had the exact same experience. My
Really?
first year grades were average at best, got married after first year, and then they were great.
It's
Something about accountability.
Clean living.
Well, she's getting up, paying for everything. So I felt like I needed to actually treat school like a job at that point. It worked well.
What was she doing while you were in school?
Marketing.
Nice.
And really just learning how to do her own type of Photoshop, Illustrator. So she launched her own business on the side and did really well with that. Then we started having kids.
Nice. And how did you guys look up to start practicing together?
So it's funny. So I started out on the dark side as well. Well, I'll put it that way. I did insurance defense, and I moved around a little bit. And we had a colleague, a mutual friend, who was working with Mike at the old firm, and I was looking to make a move. And that friend said, "You need to meet Mike." And so we did that. And I think 2 weeks later, we were working together. And that was it's funny, we joke about it because my first start date when Mike and I started working together was April 1st. And so, for years after that, since it was on April Fools, Mike was real good about reminding me that, maybe I didn't really have a position at the firm. Anyway, that was 2014? Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So 10 plus years.
And so now offices downtown Dallas.
We're actually in Uptown. So if you're familiar with Dallas, there's a building called Rosewood Court, which is right across from the Crescent,
Mhm.
and it's great. We like being just on the outskirts of downtown.
Yeah.
Downtown Dallas isn't like downtown Houston. I wish it was. Wish we had a ballpark in the middle of downtown.
Ballpark's doing just fine.
Yeah. I mean, instead it's just vagrants. Once the light goes off, it's downtown Dallas. It's not a pretty picture anymore.
Now that Texas and Arkansas play each other every year, is that having any sort of impact on the work relationship?
Or the A&M. He was A&M.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Grew up in Arkansas.
A&M and Arkansas, and then a Texas guy. You guys are going
Landale SMU. I mean, he's all over the place.
I'm a mutt when it comes to,
Yeah.
kind of.
If you sneeze, he's in the college football playoffs.
We're relatively non-denominational as a firm, meaning that there's everybody at the firm is a Longhorn except for Crooks. So it works out just fine.
That can lead to an interesting culture. There's a defense firm here where I think like every defense lawyer there went to Tech, and then like one guy from A&M, and they dress the same. They got the same bedazzled jeans, well, the real pointy slicked hair.
With the metal spot points on their boot.
They all drive the same white F-250 truck. It's pretty awesome.
They pile into
What firm is that, by the way?
I'll tell you offline.
Okay.
interesting.
So what big firm did you start at?
Thompson Co.
Oh, okay.
Knives. Yeah, so I was all over the map doing that work, and brought me down to Houston quite a bit. Did that for a few years, figured out a few months into it that I was on the wrong side of the B. But it was a great place to cut my teeth, and honestly, a lot of the partners there, at least in the Dallas office, still close to, have a lot of respect for.
Let me ask a quick question. Both of you guys made the transition from defense work to plaintiff's work. Was there a particular event that you were like, man, I just got to do something different? Or was it just you kind of always knew you were going to make that switch?
I knew I was going to be a plaintiff's lawyer before I went to law school. I worked in the file room at Barrett and Budd off and on when I was a kid. And I remember the day Fred Barron came down with a wad of $100 bills and was just passing them out to the file clerks. This is the greatest job ever, right? So I had a inkling that I wanted to do plaintiff's work. The problem was I had convinced myself that student loan debt and undergrad and law school that I had to go get like a paying job. And I was wrong about that, because the time and the interest in like developing your skills as a plaintiff's lawyer should start as soon as you can. And so I tell people all the time now, no, don't delay. If that's what you want to do, go do it. Even if you've got to, ride it out a little while without making the big easy paycheck. I shouldn't say easy paycheck, but the guaranteed paycheck. It's definitely not easy. So I knew what I wanted to do. And then I would say reaffirmance of that was we were trying a case against Michael Watts in Nueces County, the odds, and, just got our clock clean. And I just remember going, what am I doing? I should so be trying that case, not this case. I was representing some giant drug company, and and Michael was great to work with. Like, I knew what I wanted to do from day one. That just reaffirmed it.
I'm always great to work with when I'm in Nueces County.
Yeah. It's amazing how kind and generous you could be as a plaintiff's lawyer.
I'm like, every courtesy is coming your way. Whatever you need, let's just get to trial at some point.
That's it.
Yeah.
For me, I knew I always wanted to be a trial lawyer, and my path to being a plaintiff's lawyer wasn't as direct as Mike's. But to your question, there was a particular case. There's actually two, and I won't get into the details, but I mean, I had probably been licensed for less than 5 months, and it was a really big case up in North Texas, smaller town. And this particular young woman was just terribly injured. And some of the defense lawyers, not my firm, but it was one of those where you had, 8 different firms defending kind of on all fronts. And they had requested an IME, and the parents and the plaintiff's lawyers, who I have a lot of respect for, they didn't push back. And so this IME was hosted at their home, and that's, they had made all sorts of accommodations for her to live there. And she went from being the prom queen to, functioning, basically as a small child. And so during the IME, I'll never forget the sounds she made. And I had to step out of the room, and I kind of went back and I did some soul searching. I said, what am I doing? Like, I would like for not only the carriers that are affiliated with my client, but every other one to just open up their wallets, their bank accounts, and just give this family everything they need. So for me, it was kind of, I had to see that side of it to realize that wasn't where my heart was.
Sure.
So what do you guys do to piss off juries so much in the good way? Because it seems like you guys are the last 2.5 years, y'all have been raking it in on jury's verdicts.
You know, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine who's fairly conservative, and I'm like, this is more like symptomatic. I don't think, as much as I like to give us credit of saying we're stirring up juries, and like there's some methodology that's being employed to do that, but there's a climate. People are mad. They're mad in the wake of what happened in 08 and 09, where people got bailouts from the government, and then
People didn't.
bonus each other. Yeah, big companies did.
Businesses did.
They're mad about that. I think that started the distrust, and then they saw the profiteering that occurred in the wake of COVID, and people were already mad. And I think the disparity in income in this country is getting wider and wider. So you have people that are already pissed off. Now there's this whole aggrieved mentality, and so you get these people on the jury, and if the buttons that are pushed are, this is a company that is taking advantage of people. It says one thing and does another, and they're basically lying. Like, those are the ingredients of people to say, I mean, I don't want to say something on your podcast that a younger viewer probably shouldn't.
We have a very strict, no fucking profanity.
Yeah, we don't give a shit what you say, just don't curse.
Well, so juries are saying, fuck off. They're done being understanding about that. They don't have a sense of humor about it. And so a lot of these cases that you guys are talking about are people that show up with a defense team that is playing to the hand of a good plaintiff's lawyer to come in and go, okay, I'm going to capitalize on that.
It's almost kind of like they wrote an outline in like 1995 and just have been writing it.
There's an epic, what is a DEI conference that they did? DRI,
Yeah.
not DEI, DRI. Yeah, somebody made an outline. They were like, "Yeah, let's all do this."
Yeah.
But you're right. You're the first person that said it's a climate thing, because I look at the reception that Mangione got when he assassinated the CEO of United Healthcare. I mean,
Allegedly.
it's on video.
But see, that doesn't even matter anymore, because we've got cases right now, and cases that are in line to get tried. In the case that we did try, and I affectionately have a terminology for it, which is the shit in my pants is not my shit defense. These guys show up and they're like, somebody snuck in the middle of the night and they placed the defecation in my pants. Like, it didn't come from me. And jurors look at that and go, yeah, that's bullshit. And they're tired of being lied to. I think there's also like an element of that we can tap into from a political standpoint, regardless of what your political persuasion is, which is people feel like they're not getting represented at any level of government. And they feel like companies are taking over. And so I think there's a huge backlash when you talk to jurors. And we talk to a lot of jurors outside the courtroom, like focus group, everything we do.
Who do y'all use?
So we use Robert Hirschhorn a lot.
He's awesome.
He's the best.
I've used him, and then I've used Swafford quite a bit. And I like Swafford. They're two completely different methodologies, but they're both really good.
Well,
And Jensen at Austin's good.
I think the key is whoever you commit to is make sure that you commit to it and then utilize it, spend the money, and then shape your case around it. A lot of people wait till the very end, and it's kind of too late.
You'll start focus grouping early to see some themes going, and then refine as you go along.
Yeah.
You can get kind of a macro understanding of what the idea being, what do people just kind of at a 30,000 foot view, where are they leaning? And then, hopefully they're leaning in a way that's good for your case, good for your client. And if they're not, you've got time to respond and, hopefully game plan and get it where it needs to be.
How early are we talking as far as focus grouping?
I think it depends on the case. So Chris is about to focus group a case that he's worked really hard on. It's a really good case. And a lot of times people will be like, well, I don't want to focus group the case yet. We haven't taken the experts. And what we're looking for a lot of times is what's the case turn on? What's the fact in the fact pattern, particularly if you got video evidence of like in his case, this is a terrible case. And because I'm not going to say what it is, but there's a video of a guy getting burned up and so the jury can see that.
And was it,
Who all responsible?
the defense is all saying, like, that's not my fire.
No, it's on video, so you know exactly whose fire it is. The question is kind of the how and what could have been done to prevent it.
Industrial facility, I assume?
Yeah.
Bill's going to keep asking questions.
Yeah,
I figured Wayne wasn't just.
No, well, I mean, like, I do quite a bit of the.
What's the case number? And then
Well, no, like, I mean, one,
the judge, like the judge a lot.
Yeah.
it's rare that you get something like that on video. I mean, sometimes you'll see an ignition type thing, but it's rare that you see the fire.
It is fortuitous because there's an adjoining facility that has surveillance. And so, one of the defendants does not. None of the defendants have their own surveillance system, but there was an adjoining facility connected that does.
Gotcha.
And it just so happened to catch it.
And that's a good point, because in these days, TV shows, FBI, NCIS, all that, there's cameras everywhere.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll see, as a mediator, I see tons of cases, and there'll be videos, and videos are priceless. And I'll say, well, how did you get this? And they just went door to door all around the area and said, and they'll get some ring camera that is aimed here, but it would just caught just a little bit, just enough to know what happened. So do y'all do that? Will y'all go right in on an accident, like canvas the area, try to find video anywhere you can?
If you can. I mean, it's like anything else. If you're contacted within a certain window of time, then the likelihood of being able to actually get that information, if it ever existed in the first place, is greater. If you're contacted years later, you might not. And we certainly, in every case, try. It's just the likelihood's much lower if there's been, substantial time that's passed.
Yeah.
And, frankly, it's one of those where it doesn't matter how many times we actually get it. Every time we do, for me, it's surprising. And I'm like, my God, because I feel like there's more times where we can't get it than we can. Right. And to your point, I mean, video with the development of Ring doorbell cameras and all the other, just surveillance is easy now. It used to be sophisticated. Now you don't have to be sophisticated to have it. And, the old adage of a picture's, that's $1 million photo, right? Plaintiff's lawyers say that a lot. Well, now you've got video, and obviously that's more valuable because it helps the jury understand exactly what was going on, And I think to what you were saying earlier, the big thing for everybody, and this isn't novel, it's just trust, right? Developing trust with the jury. And when you have video evidence, they don't necessarily have to take your word for it as much, right? And so long as you're consistent with what they're going to see and what you're going to be able to prove to them, having video on top of it, it's just, it makes it, if you're a defense lawyer or a defendant, you got a pretty steep uphill climb.
Trial technique question. If you've got a really good video for you, do you try to show it as many times as possible, or you try to limit the amount so someone doesn't get desensitized to it?
I think it depends. I'm thinking of a case we're probably going to try in September, where I think you do want to show it over and over again. But the case we just tried, we had some surveillance footage from a St. Philip's College is across the street from where this house exploded. And it's really interesting. What I'm finding more and more often now, and this is in step with what we were talking about a second ago, Kyle, is that you can have a picture, you can have a video of whatever it is, like this whole departure from like truth and reality is crept into juries. And so you've got to be careful about what the counter is of what people are seeing and hearing with their eyes and ears. And in our case, like we had this footage of the house blowing up. It was real blurred. It was from blocks away, but we actually used it to show that they were lying to them about what they said happened. I think now it's like one building block, where it should be kind of like Chris is saying, like, this is it. Here's a videographic piece of evidence that basically proves what we say is true. I think now it's like, well, that's just one thing, because you can show people on TV whatever it is, we're talking politics, we're talking world news, whatever it is. And people are like, well, who knows if that's really accurate. It's got to fit within the group of evidence that.
And that's the CPS case you're talking about?
Yeah. So let's talk about that one. That resulted in a jury verdict of how 100 plus million.
109.5.
And just to set the stage a little bit, you got a mother and a son at home with a couple dogs, and natural gas leak resulted in an explosion and fire in which I think the son was more severely injured, but the mom was injured quite a bit as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Chris did the opening statement. You want to tee it up for us?
Yeah.
Yeah. So mother and son. Mother is in her early 60s, son in his mid 40s, and they both got from birth intellectual disabilities. So it's a situation where literally they've lived together the son's entire life, right? Mother had him when she was a teenager, and they've been together ever since. Yeah. So one of those situations where literally two people with the deck stacked against them, but managed the best they could, carved out a life for themselves, had help, but they could live independently. They took care of each other. I mean, that's just the bottom line. They didn't hold down, steady jobs. He would do odd jobs here and there, but they took care of each other. And they rented, it's basically a duplex. Okay, so you had a storefront that had been converted into a little storage shed, if you will. This place was 1920s, circa 1920s, original date of construction, and looked like not a whole lot had been done to it in the intervening decades. But in the backside, there was a house, 2-bedroom, bathroom, living area, and kitchen, and so they were renting that. And what we found out, kind of through a lot of digging over years, was ultimately that the gas delivery system that was on the outside of the house, you've got the riser coming out of the ground, and then you've got, regulator and elbows, and then it comes down to the meter, and then, basically the meter going upstream to the main. That's all the gas companies. And that's not unique to our case. That's just how it is in every city. Everything on the home side of the meter, that's the customer side, right? And what we found out is that this particular assembly, so the pipes that connect to the meter from the gas company side, they were installed in December of 1960.
Jeez.
And there was not a single document that exists to ever show that these components, including a valve that would, you could close it, turn it on and off, that sort of thing, regulator, had ever received any maintenance since 1960. So our explosion happened May 1st, 2021, right? So for, what's that, 51 years? I'm almost as bad at math as Mike is.
It's like 60.
Yeah.
61 years. No maintenance, right? So that's how it happened. We can get into the details if you want, but that's generally the case is, two people that were doing the best they could, and then this explodes, terrible fire. So the son has, over 40% of his body burned, second, third degree burns. It resulted in, a series of skin grafts, so that at one point he spent about a month in the hospital, and most of which was in the ICU. And at one point he had 65% of his body, exposed, right? Because the harvest sites for all the grafts. So 20 years ago, he would have probably died, but it just so happened that he was taken to BAMC, which is one of the premier, burn units in the country.
Druid Army Medical Center.
Yeah.
And the mom?
So her injuries, I mean, she had flash burns. It was a diffuse vapor ignition, right? So it's a flash that, basically seared her face, burned hair, things like that. But then the explosion basically had a concussive, air blast wave, right?
Blast.
there you go. So pulmonary embolism is what she was diagnosed with.
Oh, wow.
I had one of those. Not fun.
What was the defense's position that the jury really didn't go with?
Can I guess?
That there was a gas explosion.
This isn't where I parked my car.
Well, lay the groundwork. The gas company in this case is called CPL, which is owned by a utility owned by the city of San Antonio.
CPS.
Sorry.
Yeah, in the 1940s, the city of San Antonio bought a private company and made it their own. And so it's a unique situation where you have a municipality that owns their own gas utility. It's not just gas utility, they're also the electric utility. So gas and electricity owned. So they supply gas and electricity to everybody in Bexar County and a couple of the adjoining counties. So
Is that arbitrage through distributors or everybody goes directly through CPS?
it goes straight to CPS.
It's like the old HLMP situation. Yeah.
Yeah. City of Austin the same way.
So May the 1st, 2021, Robert Reimers walks into his kitchen to cook a pork chop.
That's the young man that was injured.
This house has been completely converted to electrical appliances. The testimony in the case is that the gas meter had been shut off in November of 2020, right? So the telemetry, which they have that checks the gas flow through the meter into the house, reads 0 since November 18, 2020. So he walks in to cook a pork chop. And his testimony, in his own words, is that he hears a boom. And basically the ceiling's coming down on him. He's burning. And he's underneath a mess of, the roof and everything else coming down on him. And the gas company's position was that they didn't know what caused this. They hired an expert who came and testified, who I think the jury agreed that he was probably more than a little biased. And we can talk about that also. But anyway, so the jury, I think, to answer your question, they summarily rejected the idea that this was not a gas explosion. We told them in opening, we told them in closing, we told them in between. We're like, they know this is a gas explosion. It's a gas explosion. Their whole defense is, but you can't show us what crevice that the gas flowed through and what molecules came in and at what intensity and how it would have gotten there. We're like, we got 100 different ways to explain how that is. This house is Swiss cheese. But more importantly, they relied on an investigation they did in the ensuing hours after this happened that was absolute garbage.
Yeah.
And they spent a lot of time trying to get rid of people that were susceptible to what they perceived as like conspiracy theories in Voir, which is actually kind of interesting. We should talk about that because of some of the questions that we asked. They wasted a lot of time getting rid of those people, but they ignored the demography. The people that were really bad for them, we thought, were female Hispanics. Women who were Hispanic did not like the gas company. And we knew that because we had spent a lot of time focus grouping this case, multiple juries. And so what did our jury comprise mostly of? A lot of Hispanic females, a lot of people from other walks, but we certainly had a disproportionate number. I think it was something like 6.
What was the theory behind that?
Just was the trends of what we saw. Their theory, I think, was that this whole notion that the investigation that they conducted after this explosion had happened, that somehow there was a ensuing cover-up, that they needed to get rid of people that were susceptible to that. The problem is that I think that works if you don't really have an ensuing cover-up. And the evidence in this case was that they tried to, let me just be real direct about it. These are poor folks living in a poor neighborhood. This isn't Alamo Heights. This is Coliseum Heights. This is an old house. These are people living $700 a month, basically living off of their disability checks. And in the middle of the night, they're taken to a burn unit, and they know that the city is going to come out and scrape this house. And I think the gas company was just like, we're wiping our hands of the situation. We're not going to document anything that's going to point to gas, and we're moving on, which is what they did.
What did they say the fuel, what was their theory of what the fuel was for the explosion?
And how far is your office from Dealey Plaza?
It's not that far, actually. Distance. You can walk. I believe that Lee Harvey acted alone, actually. But so the question was,
what was the defense's theory on what the fuel was for that?
Okay, so that's why Chris.
It's not. Yeah.
It's laughing because it was somewhat comical. So they said we know this is not our gas because we conducted this bar hole testing in the evening ensuing after this explosion. And a bar hole test, which for people who don't know what that is, it's basically you put a combustible gas indicator in the ground. Problem is they didn't follow their protocols. There was no real documentary proof that any of it was done. Just take our word for it. We're the gas company. You can trust us. But the problem with all that is they didn't really have a plausible theory. I think the big problem the gas company had, it's one thing to say it's not our gas, but you better be able to say what caused this.
Yeah, it's an explosion.
It's a huge elephant in the room to say the roof blows off the house, ends up in the neighbor's yard. You got a debris field that's scattered over 300 yards. Doors blown off their hinges, windows blown out of the window frames,
Security cars blown
off the window, off the
glass out of cars, on the street. So they said, well, maybe this was a cooking fire. Okay. Maybe this guy was warehousing propane and gasoline inside the house.
that we couldn't find any tanks or anything like that.
And there were pictures taken inside the house 3 weeks before this explosion. And there was no evidence of that.
Cops do tend to look for stuff like that.
Yeah, especially arson investigators.
Right.
Yes, who testified and said this was gas explosion. Maybe there was dust in the air, like a sawmill type explosion, where you can have particulate in the air.
Combustible dust.
Yeah, that was a new theory that they had.
That's a fun one.
Yeah. They came up with a theory that perhaps maybe they had a picture that they tried to get in front of the jury that was like a can of Raid or something on the back porch, and they wanted to say, well, see, look, there could have been more of this.
This could have had 700 of these. Exactly. Could have been like the Diddy of Raid cans.
And anyway, we had some fun with their expert over these things, and essentially...
It's a lot of Aquanet. You're storing a lot of Aquanet to bring it on drums to burn down the governor's mansion.
So they didn't really have a good excuse, which, going back to the original question about why do people get so angry?
Yeah.
I think it's this kind of shit.
Oh, that it all makes sense now.
Yeah.
Well, more to your theory, hadn't there been reports and complaints about natural gas leaks in the neighborhood or even near this house?
Well, so there had been a history of meter failures at this house. And earlier when we were talking about the assembly, the piping that we were discussing that was in place since 1960, that never got touched. But that we know of, they had records of 2 meter replacements that happened in 2008 and then again in 2015. And we're talking, people reporting cracks in the meter, hissing sounds, gas blowing out, people reporting this. And so gas company comes out and then they replace the meter, right? And there was actually an interesting document. The first meter repair that they had a record of, 2008, it actually says, basically time 3 in the document. And when we asked all the CPS people, what's that mean? What's this times 3? Does that mean that this is the 3rd time this meter's been repaired or replaced? No one knew, right? And so, I think one thing that the jury found really interesting, and ultimately to what we were discussing earlier, it looks like natural gas. It smelled like natural gas. The characteristics of the event are consistent with natural gas being the only fuel source. And then you've got this history of meter repairs at this home. I mean, our first home was built, in the 1950s, right? And we had natural gas. I was there years. Never once was the meter replaced, right? I mean, it's not normal for meters to have to be replaced in the first place, but to have it replaced in 2008 and then again just about 7 years later, that's uncommon. And then 6 years after that last mold replacement, you've got a report of somebody smelling natural gas there at the house that night on the outside coming from the inside. Landlord happened to stop by that night. And
that's a big part of the case.
Huge part. And,
Did the landlord say anything to the people inside?
Yes.
Jesus.
But the people inside are mentally compromised. And of course, there's this thing called, odor fatigue, right? And so if you're living in a residence where gas has been migrating into it,
Probably over days or weeks.
exactly.
Did they argue that y'all's folks had some responsibility for that?
Well, smart move. By the time that it was being argued to the jury, they were no longer blaming our clients, but they were blaming other people, right? And Mike actually made the ABC reference in his close, anyone but the company, anyone but CPS Energy, because they were blaming the landlord. They were blaming, her for basically saying, well, if first off, this isn't natural gas, we're certain of that, but you should have called us when you smelled the thing that smells like natural gas, because if you had, well, then, we would have fixed it. But it's not natural gas.
Yeah, we would have fixed the natural gas that wasn't actually there in our.
Yeah, think about the metaphysics about that. So I still laugh about this. Let me get this straight. You call the gas company who says this was not a natural gas explosion, and they would have come out and done what? Performed another investigation that concludes there's no natural gas.
Times 4. Times 3.
That's right.
That's another, in my opinion, that's a miscue on their part to say, I think it's an all or nothing deal.
Yeah.
On that defense. You can't go in and say, okay, well, if you think it's natural gas, then really it's the landlord's fault. This is a woman who literally is taking away time from feeding the homeless down on the border.
That's literally what she does.
So blame this lady who's a 75-year-old widow who's taken in these folks who are intellectually disabled and had actually just shown up just to check on them. Said, I smell gas. And she was concerned about it enough that she spent the night, and she actually put herself in harm's way. She was there when the house blew up.
Oh, wow.
She was in that separate.
If it had been leaking for a while, why had there not been an explosion earlier? Was there ignition source? Just
You've got to get, if you guys probably know this, but you've got to get the right upper and lower limit of mixture between gas. The properties of natural gas are you have to have it between 5 and 15% gas to air. And so it's really kind of a fickle thing. If you don't have just the right condition that meets an ignition source, it's not going to ignite.
And was it the cooking? The
ignition was at this electric stovetop where he was grilling this pork chop or cooking this pork chop. Everyone agreed. And that's another interesting fact. There were multiple fire investigators from the city of San Antonio that responded while the house was still on fire. I mean, it burned for hours because it took CPS Energy several hours to drill down to the main at the street and cut the gas off because the gas was blowing out of the riser area. It had been broken when the home shifted. So, you had everyone, another interesting kind of Mike's word metaphysics of this defense. Don't believe the fire investigators who have no stake in the outcome of this when they say we investigated it and we determined that natural gas is the fuel source. Don't believe them. However, we do agree with them, and our expert agrees that the area of origin was the kitchen and that the likely ignition source was the stove, right? So we're going to agree with them up until the point where they tell us that it was our product that, caused this, right? And so it's one of those interesting, needles that we see defense lawyers try to thread. And to Mike's comment a second ago, you're better off just all in, go all in one way or the other, because when you start trying to, parse it out and play both sides, I think the jury just responds.
Yeah, I think at that defense, you're like, what's the difference between 50 million and 950 million is nothing. These taxes.
Did we cover everything you wanted to say about Voir dire in that case?
I think I could add a couple of points. So we've been.
I feel like you can really win a case in Voir dire.
You can certainly lose it.
Yeah, you can.
That's
I'm always looking to pick up Voir dire tips.
Yeah, you can definitely lose a case in Voir dire. So I'll just tell you a couple things. First off, the longest Voir dire of my career was how long was it? It was 10 and a half hours.
Yeah.
Just constant. They brought up 40 jurors. It was absolutely insane. But here's what I'll say about Voir. So it drives them crazy when you ask questions that effectively, because remember, you can't ask commitment questions, obviously, but you can ask questions that test what people's beliefs or what their feelings are about a particular issue. And so what I've been doing lately is I ask the question and I know what the jurors' responses are who are sitting on our jury. And then I like to feed the question back to the witness that the company puts on the witness stand. So like, for example, here's a good one. Companies sometimes manipulate the system in order to avoid taking responsibility for their conduct. How many people agree with that? You're going to get a lot of people's hands go up in this current climate. The other way you can do it is you can ask it as a scaled question. So you're looking for people that have, really strong beliefs about that. But what's fun is that you know what the composition of your jury is because you've asked the question. And then in this particular case, I'll just give you an example of how that plays out. The corporate witness for the gas company was the guy that led the investigation, which is a bad idea.
Yeah, so you don't want to give anybody with personal knowledge the 30B6 time.
For sure. And they know that we're very critical of the investigation. So he's the face of your company. You're really owning it.
And we had deposed him twice.
Yeah. Chris deposed him once, and then I took him as the corporate rep. And then
No, you get an individual, and then, that's the best part. I love when they do that.
So you get 2 bites at the apple. But so he, nice guy, but probably not a very good idea. But so anyway, he comes down and he testifies. And one of the big issues in the case was that after this happened, the Railroad Commission comes out and investigates. They're supposed to report it. They didn't follow any of their reporting obligations, in our opinion. And we made that point known in front of the jury. But then the Railroad Commission starts asking, well, give us the report from the fire department. Give us the report. And the initial report had suggested, well, maybe this was a gas leak. But what ends up happening is the fire investigator and the arson investigator, 2 different people, both determined this is a natural gas explosion. So they've already determined the internal investigation for the gas company is this isn't gas, open and shut. The Railroad Commission starts saying, well, give us the report. Like when they finalize the cause and origin investigation, give that to us. And the guy, there's a whole paper trail of him just gaslighting the guy, for lack of a better description. He's saying, as soon as I get it, I'll get it to you. And then we proved that, he had it and he just didn't give it to him. And so we go through that whole series of questions. And what's the question that I put up on the overhead? It's like, hey, everybody on the jury had to answer this question, which is that companies sometimes manipulate the system in an effort to avoid taking responsibility for their actions. What's your answer to this? He's like, oh, it's a 0. Does a 0 on a scale of 0 to 10. I'm like,
And you got
why you'd say that?
he had 12 people in the box. They're all like,
So the jury's like, oh, now I know why he asked us that.
And so the thing you said that they were focused on conspiracy theorists or something?
Yeah, I think that they had convinced themselves that there was really nothing to see here about the whole idea that this investigation that they did was a real investigation. We thought it was as much a getaway as it was an investigation. Like they were out there in the middle of the night. They didn't barhole test any of the gas installations of the 6 houses around this house. It's like all they looked at was from the service tap. They did 4 barhole tests there, and then they did 3. They didn't even cover the perimeter of the house. They did 1 in each corner of 3 corners of the house. And it's clearly a gas explosion. But I just think, and we actually told the jury this, like, be careful what you look for. You just might find it. They knew this house was going to be scraped, and they just assumed, this is the testimony, they assumed that the problem was on the customer side. And they knew that once the house was scraped, no one would be able to prove it or disprove it. What they weren't banking on was that the gas had been shut off since November of 20, and there were no gas appliances. Then they had a problem.
And their own telemetry showed, right? So you got the guys that are doing this investigation at the scene, we believe, reaching certain conclusions. And then you get back to the home office and it's, wait a second.
Yeah.
How do we explain it now?
Well, good work, guys. This
is I assume they put up a bond and y'all are on appeal?
No.
Or did y'all settle it?
We had a high-low agreement.
Oh, there you go.
It's been publicly reported. So it was a $60 million was the high.
The agreement was negotiated and struck and put on the record right in front of the media in the courtroom when we did it.
Oh, wow. While they were out?
The jury, I mean, it was literally finalized moments before the jury came back.
How long did they deliberate?
4 hours.
Wow.
Ooh, that's quick.
Yeah, so we interviewed the alternate jurors the Friday before the jury really got the case. And all 3 jurors were like, we're with the plaintiffs. And then one of the 3 was like, we would like to award more money than your ask. So I think that sewed up the gas company that.
Oh, they were talking to him with y'all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I read her. So we sent a news hours demand when we came back on Friday and said, okay, they had $100 million in insurance. We wanted all of it. And then all of a sudden they were talking about high-low agreements.
Yeah. So you cut that deal while the jury was deliberating, because there's only 4 hours, but like in the day.
No, there was that day.
We were negotiating with the lawyers, and who are fine lawyers. They did, the lawyers that defended this case, I think, are honorable. I think they did a really good job. I just think it's a tough case. Yep. I think it'd been misevaluated. And so this is one of my favorite parts of the story. So we're negotiating this high-low agreement. They keep coming back. Okay, how much? What if we just no high-low? We'll just sell the case. And so they decided they'd go the high-low route. When they come back, and the bailiff walks out and says, "We've got a jury verdict," and they're like, "We'll accept your high-low."
Oh, because of the timing of it.
Yeah.
4 hours.
Didn't want to hear what that jury had said, but
Put it on a record.
Yeah. Wow. Well, good work, boys. That's awesome.
it's a point. You complimented the defense lawyers. I was just thinking through, like, what would have been an effective defense to that, other than just saying it's our fault, please don't hurt us too bad on damages.
Well, hit us for $50 million.
Yeah.
So I want to hear what Chris has to say too on this, but let me just get this out real quickly. I think the most important thing about these cases is the evaluation. So burn injury cases, I had a very senior lawyer, a mentor of mine, say this one time: you don't want to try these cases. These are not the cases that you want to, it's not the hill you want to die on, right? Burn injury cases are so dangerous. And so you couple that with all the other things going on. And, we didn't really have any, by our standards, meaningful settlement discussions to settle this case. And they just didn't really take it seriously, we thought. So I think that's the first thing, is you got to be sober about evaluating a real serious burn injury case. The fact that these folks had intellectual disabilities was an enhancer.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry, Chris.
No, I mean, Peter, I think you're right. If you're going to defend a case like that, I think you're both right. I think you don't try that case if you're a defense lawyer, unless you've got plaintiffs' lawyers who are making it. I mean, like I said, it started out on the defense side, and there were times where plaintiffs' lawyers asked for so much that as a defense lawyer, you could show up and lose and expect to lose, but you weren't trying to win in the first place. You were just trying to beat whatever that demand was, right? That wasn't the case here. I mean, here, it goes back to their entire defense. I mean, if you're going to try and defend the case, be honest, intellectually and actually honest, right? Don't try and mislead people with something that everybody's senses tells them and know what it is, and you're saying it's something different. So start out by just accepting responsibility, and then focus on the damages, right?
That's different.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It takes a lot of balls to do that. But to Mike's point, I think the reason why people don't do it, I can only speculate into our case, but I think the reason why more defense lawyers don't do that is because they're required to make these evaluations early and often. And I think that what happens is, over time, their evaluations stack up. And at some point, they are so ingrained based on what their evaluations have said that it is like trying to parallel park a train, to get to change course.
Oh, yeah. Once you say, like, 15 million in the reserve, it's hard to say, like, hey, I said 50, not 15. It's hard to change that number significantly when you got, insurance companies putting out reserves like that. So, oof.
So that's the way I see it.
Where do y'all market for these cases? I'm trying to get some of these facts. Jesus.
We didn't know those facts. I mean, he worked that case up for almost 3 years. Yeah. And so
I've got like 3 of those in my.
Yeah. Had y'all had some natural gas ones in Dallas? I thought so.
Dallas has a real big problem with the natural gas system. Lone Star Gas installed their gas utility system. They use these galvanized steel couplers that leak. And so you see houses in Dallas exploding every year.
Every year.
Yes.
Right. Geofencing Dallas.
Well, guys, thanks for coming all this way.
Yeah, he's good.
I really appreciate it. I'm running a fan of the show.
Stay up in Dallas. You don't need any competition down here.
Yeah, how is Dallas as a venue?
I think there's more Houston lawyers practicing in Dallas now than there are Dallas.
100%. That's fair. I have a handful.
No, it's good. I mean, it's a good venue.
I was going to say our next guest, I've seen some advertisements up there in the Dallas way. So I've seen advertisements everywhere for that one. There we go. All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Do I have to say that back?
So if you like this, follow us on Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Instagram. Did I say that already? TikTok?
Nailed it.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
I love when you say that part.
All right. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.